Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Matter of Trust. This is Patrick, and I am Yeshua. Today, we are talking about forgiveness, because forgiveness is connected to what we talked about last time, judgment. Because after we judged, we probably want to forgive whoever we judged, or even ourselves, for judging those people that we were judging. Also, it can be small things like forgiving your best friend eating your ice cream if you live with your roomie, and someone eating your leftovers from yesterday's Chinese or whatever. Patrick, how do you want to start up on this talk about forgiveness?
There are several angles, and one is maybe just you're already going there, I think. But what exactly is forgiveness? Maybe there are different examples, or also some definition, or you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah. When I wrote these answers to these kind of questions, it got very philosophical. So I'm gonna already now be putting this out, so people know that okay, well, this might get a little bit alchemical or philosophical or esoteric. Keep watching.
Mhm.
What I've been thinking is forgiveness is when judgment turns into understanding, when resentment turns into compassion, when, alchemically speaking, when we unconditionally set aside any differences and know that, for example, iron has a life path and gold has a life path. If we're talking about like elements, like substances, like you have a life path, I have a life path, someone out there has another life path. And just embracing that unconditionally and understanding that we all are here with equally divine nature. That, I think, is a good example of what forgiveness is. Because it's a broad topic. Like you can forgive in many ways, and some things are greater than others or minor than others. Like, for example, the Chinese from the fridge from yesterday's leftovers is a minor thing, And forgiving your girlfriend for or your boyfriend for being cheating is a big one, So there's a gap, but still it's the same thing we're talking about. It's the same thing we're talking about, the same emotion, the same essence and quality.
Mm. That's I really like it. Especially your beginning. It's kind of, you said philosophical, you came almost with a warning, but what you stated in the beginning was like a nugget. When you said, like, when judgment turns to understanding, when resentment turns to compassion, I mean, it's just, these are good. These are really good for when if one wanted to coin it in a few words. There can be much to say about different situations, but it is the same. The emotions are the same. I also heard when people talk about forgiving, or how it's so difficult to forgive someone for something, it's probably because there has to be a, what do you say, like you have to make a difference. You have to see a difference between
Discernment.
discernment. Yeah, you have to have this discernment between whether you say it's okay that you did it, or just that you did it and I let it go. It's like I accept it, not because it's okay that you do it, but more like I accept it because it happened, and I don't want it to haunt me. I don't want it to control me. So there's this discernment, because I understand if some people feel it's impossible to forgive, if they also feel that they have to acknowledge what someone did and, like, kind of say it's okay to do so. So this discernment can make it easier when we realize, okay, it's actually very much for my own sake, and that will of course benefit everybody around me and also the situation, a person I'm forgiving. It's really to be able to move on in our own life. If I forgive, I can move on. I'm not stuck. I'll be light again after the heaviness of irritation or resentment and judgment and anger. This is just something about what is forgiveness, because it can be misunderstood. It can seem very impossible if we think we just have to pretend that we feel it's okay what someone did, for example.
Yeah, because there's a difference between saying that you forgive and actually forgiving. Like saying that you forgive is not actually forgiveness, because it misses the essence of what forgiveness is. It misses that transformational quality, that transmutation of one feeling to another, which is kind of what it is. Forgiveness is a word for catalyzation of one state to another. Usually when we have to forgive something, we have a choice. And it usually starts from a point where something seemingly bad has happened, something that seems like seems bad to us or hurts us in some way. So you have to kind of see beyond that and transmute that and know that, okay, well, this thing is not just happening because of something bad is happening to me. This is an opportunity for transformation, opportunity for transforming something into a new state of being. And when we talk about discernment, for example, it can be quite difficult sometimes to really forgive certain people for certain actions. And that's completely understandable. There's nothing wrong about that. Like, we all are on a specific path, specific journey for us, and we all are in our own stage. So we're on our own level of ourselves. And with that in mind, forgiveness is not something that's forced. It's something that's felt. So you really feel the forgiveness. It's like opening up your heart to what seems bad, to discover that it's not that bad at all. It's actually an opportunity for you to escalate your being.
Yeah, it is very powerful, and yes, sometimes can feel so hard. And I was thinking that if it feels really hard to forgive or be in that state of, for example, compassion and understanding, there's probably an even greater opportunity. It's like the opportunity for expanding and learning or growing from the process of forgiving is probably bigger the harder it is. This is funny thing. So maybe we touched upon this, but how do we forgive?
How we forgive is up to how well we embrace. So, for example, if you say you forgive someone, how long are you willing to hug them? That's a good question. I mean, you should ask yourself that when you're attempting to forgive someone or forgiving someone. How long are you willing to hug them?
Interesting.
It could be as simple as that, you know?
In my mind, I just had pictures flashing of like different people that I would hug or not, and why. Sometimes it's not due to forgiveness. Sometimes it's just another, I think, chemistry thing. Some people just attract you more than others. But it's an interesting question to imagine yourself doing kind gestures. Imagine yourself being kind to a person, for example, that you were saying that you forgive or that you want to forgive. That can be a really good way of realizing how far am I on this journey of forgiveness? Because if you can have a natural, good feeling in your body while you imagine an act of kindness toward this person, that's probably a good indicator. And if you feel this something inside that is not pleasant when you think of the person, probably the whole process of forgiving is not over.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And again, like it's not forced. Like forgiveness is not something that you force, because sometimes we have these heavy feelings. It's a heavy process sometimes, you know. Like if you imagine having to forgive your mom's murderer, that's a tough one. You know, how do you do that? It's not as easy, I would just put it, because it's a heavy process. But the essence of it is the same. How long are you willing to hug him? How long can you hold it out? How well can you embrace that feeling? You know, and let that release. Let it become an integrated part of you.
Also, yeah, I mean, you can think of a person and you can ask yourself, how long am I willing to hug this person? That is like a little test. And then on how to move along, if it's hard, I was thinking of, okay, a moving focus, a moving toward what is the feeling I like to have instead of, for example, a grudge towards someone, or anger, irritation, something. And then I focus on something or doing something that will give me the right feeling, the right state. So for a while, forgetting and moving focus on a situation, a person, just to make sure that I cultivate that state that is nice to be in, with good emotions. And in that state, from that state, I can again try to put focus back on the situation and person, and see if some of that good state, these good emotions, if I can transfer them into this thought of the image of this person or this situation. And that can be a way. So yeah, it's linked to what you said about not forcing. It's a way of just saying, okay, yeah, so that's difficult, but what is nice? And then make that strong inside of us. Make that strong. If I make it strong in me, what is nice, and I have easy access to the good parts of life, then there's a chance I can bring that over to the parts I find more difficult. So yeah, actually moving focus totally away can help. And then there's also other processes like grief. I have personally not been cultivating grief and how to use it so much. I think I automatically did in some situations. My system sort of had to, but yeah, there's a time for everything. Sometime be in some emotions, accept them, but really also move away, cultivate what's really nice, a nice state, and use that state to bring some niceness to people and situations.
It kind of reminds me of a story that I heard yesterday, actually, by Alan Watts. And the story is not by Alan Watts per se, it's a story he heard that he shared with other people. Alan Watts is this philosophical a Buddhist, I think it was, a Buddhist or Hinduist. He was an inspiring man, anyways. And he told this story about a man that had a horse in this small village. And one day, this horse just bolted. It ran away. And the neighbors came to him and said, "Oh, that's too bad." And he said, "Maybe." The next day, 7 horses, the same horse came with 7 horses with it. And the neighbors came to him and said, "Oh, that's so great." And he said, maybe. Then the next day, the son was trying to tame one of these horses that the horse had brought back home. And he was thrown off the horse and he broke his leg. The neighbors came to him and said, "Oh, that's too bad." And the man said, "Maybe." And then the day after, soldiers came for enrollment for the army because there was war going on. And usually the young people are getting enrolled for this, but because he had broken his leg, the son, he was not enrolled.
Mm.
The neighbors came and said to the man, "That's so great, congratulations." He was like, "Maybe." You know, there's this complexity of that, you know, like it's always, when something bad happens to us, there's always a complexity involved that we cannot see with our intellectual self. And something greater is, it's by the in The Alchemist, it's called the hand that writes it all.
I love that story. I love it. And I've been thinking of it since we had the talk on last episode and about judgment. I was thinking exactly about that story. And so it's cool. I'm happy you brought it up and you mentioned it. I think it deserves to be spread. It's such a simple, good example that anything that seems good or bad, you just don't see it all. I think it just is what it is. Everything can have, different aspects, and there's a complexity to everything. But the story makes it sort of simple to see that.
We can also talk about like how one of the examples I mentioned, that forgiveness is when judgment turns to understanding. Because someone who has done something to you, for example, this guy or girl, woman, whatever, has done something not because they wanted to intentionally hurt you, but because there's some unprocessed emotions or processes that this individual hasn't gone through. So, for example, if someone is, if you have a boyfriend and this boyfriend has cheated on you, there's some unprocessed emotions behind that. There's some old patterns that this guy has somehow integrated into the system to believe that this is all right in this situation. And to really forgive that kind of behavior, you have to understand it. Because you cannot forgive something you cannot understand in that sense. It's very hard, at least. You can easily, when you train forgiveness, you can do that by slight ease.
By what?
But when you just by slight ease, like not easily, but slightly easier. And yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, because when you understand that someone has a process to go through, and you can see that and you can understand that, it makes it so much easier to forgive people. At some point, it's we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, before we started this video. There comes a point where forgiveness is just this natural state of being. Like it's not an option to not forgive, because it's just part of who you are. It's about the connectedness with this oneness that we have talked about many times before on this podcast, because the essence of that is who we truly are. And that one being that we all truly are is all about forgiveness. Because it's we, and everything and every action and every cause and every effect is created by this oneness. And if you imagine that you created all of this, would you have things that you could not forgive? Would you create things that you could not forgive? And if you did create things that you knew was bad, would you be able to forgive that, to know that there will be an effect that probably is very fruitful for whatever you're going through and trying to achieve in life? It's a great question to ask.
And yeah, once, I mean, if we embrace the idea that all is one and we are that one, we're both part of it, but we are it. And I mean, before embracing this idea, maybe these questions are a little challenging to ask, but it's out there. It's out there whenever we feel like it, we're ready. And I was actually thinking of this quote from the Bible. I haven't read the Bible that much, but some, and then I talk to people, and then people sometimes refer to the Bible because it's such an old book, one of these old books. And there's this situation where Jesus is on the cross and he's actually suffering, but then there's a turning point where he says, okay, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. He says something like that. And that reminds me of this process of just trying to understand. So maybe before we understand someone, we can at least say, okay, maybe they don't know what they're doing. So it's not, maybe people don't do something to really, really just get to me. I mean, they can say they do something to get to me and hurt me, but what's going on inside of them is also that there are some things that they work on and they're going through something in their life, and I'm just being part of it. So it's really them going through some work, some inner work, some challenges that they are facing. So I sometimes think of this quote if I don't fully understand what's going on, and then remind myself that, okay, other people are on their own path, and I cannot know exactly what's going on, but I'm pretty sure they are learning some lessons. So I like to remind myself of that when something happens that I didn't feel was amazing in the moment. Yeah. So I was just reminded of this quote. First, I can accept that maybe I don't understand, and then embrace that, hey, for sure, it's probably, the headline is probably maybe always a lesson. Lessons to learn for me and for them. Or yeah. Maybe
It's a very good quote. It kind of speaks of the awareness that it requires to forgive everything, and to really embrace that deep forgiveness for everything. Because the more you start to forgive and the more you realize that all of this is actually the same being, you also start to see the forgiveness from certain things that you weren't per se involved with. For example, like Second World War, but those actions were committed by humans, and as humans, we have a certain common responsibility, a collective responsibility for these kind of things as well, which is also another reference to the Bible, Jesus bearing the cross and the sins of humankind. It's the same thing, because he realized that, okay, well, we all are one. So to be able to forgive humankind, I have to forgive every single action of the humankind. And I have to bear that with me and know that this is also me. I'm not secluded or separated from these happenings. So in some sense, you are involved with Second World War and the annihilation of Jews and the world's going on right now and the war in the Gaza Strip. Maybe not directly, but you're part of the race, part of the conscious collective of who are doing this right now. So if you can take that responsibility on yourself and know that, well, okay, I take responsibility for this. I know that I have a certain part in this. Maybe not a very, very clear part, a very direct part, but I am a part of this. I can tell you by experience that this is hard. This is very hard. In the beginning, it's like, no, I can't take responsibility for my dad hitting my mom or something like that, you know. But then I'm like, oh, you know what? If I can't take responsibility for that, well, I also do not. I also proclaim that I don't believe that we're all one and that we're all the same being. And that for me is a no-go, because that's part of my potential that I will not be in contact with, that I deny to have any contact with. Another example of this that mindset nerds can relate to, likely, is that when I was in Italy, I was talking to this lady, and she said that, "Oh my God, have you watched the news? It's this the Third World War is coming now." And I was just thinking for a moment, listening to that, you know, and then I was thinking about this concept that just explained a little bit about. And I told her, okay, well, why do you say it out loud? I mean, do you wish this to happen? She was like, no, I have no part of this. It's not my weapons, not my tanks. You know, it's I have nothing to do with it. Okay, well, but you just spoke it. You just said that there's the Third World War and it's happening right now. Are you aware of that? Yes. Okay, so you do have a part in it. And she wouldn't respond to that because it's kind of it's a heavy emotion to process, very heavy emotion to process. But it's essentially that for the mindset geeks out there.
It also it means that we have to not separate past, now, and future so much, because for example, if something happened, a bomb was dropped, a father was hitting the mother, and then we are now. So by talking about it, we can say it happened in the past. So that's why now I'm here. I'm not part of the past. That's gone. But the thing is that things connect. So that bomb that was dropped, if that causes aggression, because we say, oh, now it's war, then it will cultivate aggression. It will cultivate something in us. And that's how we cannot really say we're not linked to whatever happens. And it can almost become obvious if we think that we feel fear when we see the news, for example. And I'm like, okay, so you get emotions linked to that. You have emotions that you link to that. When that happens, it's almost like a evidence that you're connected, that you're part of it. It affects you, and that fear, or if that was the emotion, will then affect your surroundings and your life. So you're like spreading it. So if we don't take responsibility for our participation with our emotional state, if we don't take a little charge navigating our emotional responses, then then we might spread something we don't want. But it can easily be very, very subconscious or unconscious, or subconscious. It takes, again, awareness. But I think the emotions that we can feel when we hear about something, it's sort of an evidence that we are linked to it. Yeah.
Definitely. And we can even take it to another level and say that, okay, well, if you don't take responsibility for it, who will? We can talk about how media today, for example, spreads certain messages about certain occurrences, sometimes even things that hasn't happened yet. But because we use so much social media and give so much attention to it, it's easy to create an image by multiple videos and trends and such things, you know. So you can easily, for example, Third World War, there's not a Third World War per se, but people believe that it will be or it is here because there's so many videos about it on YouTube and there's talk about it in the news. And behind that, there's a whole agenda to spread these things out, you know, because it's lucrative for some people. And so I just want to put it very bluntly. Those people that are behind that is the people you give the responsibility to if you don't take the responsibility. And and we can only see where that goes. Like it goes to war, it goes to famine, it goes to bad distribution of resources, it goes to many different very bad things. And when we take our own responsibility for those kind of things, we get that power back. Because if we don't, we just give that power to some other entity, some other being that's willing to take on some kind of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But if we choose to take that responsibility, we get that choice, we get that power back, we get that direction where we think is or we feel is the best direction to put this energy into.
Mm-hmm. It's I feel the grandness of the word responsibility in coming out here, and we have mentioned that word before. I don't know if it's an episode also with that name, but responsibility. It felt kind of good as you talked about it, because I just had these ideas and images that every time something happens, a constructive path could be, at least I like to see it like that. Okay, this and this occurs, or this I heard about. What can I do in my life, however small a thing, that will bring the course of human history in a direction that seems nice? So what can I do? I can always do something. It's maybe I don't see how what I do will affect on the other side of the world, or will affect the future 100 years forward, 1,000 years forward, but it will. Every little thing counts. So I really like to try and get creative and see, okay, what little bit can I do? And maybe I'm in a powerful position so that a little bit is actually a lot. You know, if I was a leader of a country or a big organization, of course, I might feel that my decisions are not small, but we can always do something. And it's almost like it's a creative practice. It can be interesting and exciting to figure out what is that small thing today that I can do. And it can be anything from saying the right words that will spread the message that you like, or it can be pulling yourself away from an environment to make sure that you are not to try and keep let's say clean or pure or not affected. If you feel like it's difficult to reject something you don't like to be projected on you, or you're in an environment you don't like, stepping out of it and stepping back, it's also moving the course of human history, because that is your decision. I stepped away. That is stepping into something else, something new, wherefrom you have new possibilities to create. So we have these options with every decision to affect, and it's the small things that are connected to the big picture, and it's kind of amazing, fascinating, maybe scary and overwhelming. It can be maybe, but I like to think of it, and the talk about this can make it more clear that, hey, we matter. I matter. You matter. And this is empowering, that to know that we matter, no matter how little or we feel we can do, or how much we feel we can do, it matters.
If you're not completely aware of exactly what Patrick is speaking to, you can even take it down low. Like we talked about micromanaging before, which is essentially that, but with responsibility. And what is responsibility? Responsibility. So your ability to respond to certain situations. That's all it is. It's you directing certain energies, certain kinds of ways of being into directions where you see that, okay, this benefits a greater whole. This benefits a lot of people. This benefits the development of the earth, wherever you want to put it, your own development in a benevolent way. And we're talking about forgiveness.
We can move to the question: is there a right time for forgiveness? We have touched upon this, so maybe it's just briefly done. You mentioned that it can be difficult, and we are on our own journey, so timing is different for people. But is there a way to know that it's possible, or like now I'm more ready than another time, or like are there some indicators, or you have some thoughts on that? Or
Well, there's no other time than the present. But with that being said, in the present, you have to presently sit with what is present. That's emotions, that's the hard things, the hard stuff as well, and also the light stuff. When we're talking about forgiveness, for example, there can be heavy emotions involved and triggers and such, and these are harder to sit with presently. So as long as you're present with it and you're in a state of acceptance, the forgiveness will blossom little by little. Yes, there's a right time for forgiveness, and it's right now, right here and now. But don't expect yourself to just head on, do it immediately. Like, again, forgiveness is not forced. Forgiveness is felt. It's something that you deeply within yourself agree with and are in alignment with. It's not something that you force. It's not something that you just say and then it's out of the world, because then all of the small, sneaky things underneath the surface, like the emotions and the resentment and the anger and all that kind of stuff, is gonna be there. So it's really the process of going through that, and the right time is always there, always.
It makes me think that now is always an option for something to happen, something new to happen, a switch also in our state. So if we can just start by believing that the right time is now, really believing that the right time to forgive could be any moment, then we don't have to force that it has to be now. We don't have to force it when it comes, but just embracing the belief that it will come at any time. Could be now or the next now. Just that belief, to be open for that. That is the openness and the acceptance. You mentioned acceptance. So being just ready, always be ready for the forgiveness to enter, to cover you, to fill you up, understanding and compassion. Always be ready. Could happen any moment. With that belief, it will happen.
So, with that being said, is there anything we cannot forgive?
Well, the first answer is no. And then, of course, there can be probably examples of, I don't know, if some people died without forgiving something, and then maybe the process of forgiving is moved on to next generation. It could be the example with, let's say, Second World War, that it could maybe take could maybe take more than one generation to truly feel understanding and compassion. So I wouldn't say that we cannot forgive, but sometimes, since we cannot force it and we don't know exactly when, we don't know if we are gonna experience this, or like, I don't know if everybody experienced it on their deathbed, for example, that they were able to let go and forgive everything. So I don't know if what happens there, but I'm aware of a certain time span on these things sometimes.
I would also say no, a clear no. There's nothing in this world that cannot be forgiven because, you know, the universe or God created this in a specific way. Again, the story about the man and the horses and the sun and the army and all that, you know, like there's a bigger complex situation that we do not see by the by the naked eye. To have an understanding of that, you know, is in case of relative to when we're talking about forgiveness, is important, I think, because you really get to see the bigger picture of everything, and you get to just being that state of flow. You know, today there's so much about you have to push forward, you have to work hard, and we're transitioning from that because the previous generations was a little bit more harsh on that, but it's still there, and you can kind of see that if people haven't worked hard, for example, they're afraid that they're not going to get what they truly deserve in life. And that's such bullshit because you're meant for this specific thing. So no matter what you do is always the right thing to do in the moment. That can be hard to grasp, you know, but that is about forgiving yourself, understanding yourself. Because when you do that, you see that, okay, well, maybe God has passed a path for me that seems a little bit rigid right now, a little bit confusing, or downright unfair. But there's something beyond that I do not see yet.
Right. We have one more question just to make sure that we hit that nail on the head. For sure, we talked about it, but do we need forgiveness?
So that depends on the receiver. What do you want to? What do you decide to do? So again, it's about a choice. You have a choice. If it doesn't feel aligned with you, I mean, who am I to say what you need to do? I mean, I really can't. So do you want to hang on to something? Sure, go ahead, do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Excuse my way of saying it, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's space for that as well. If you want to let go of something, on the other hand, sure, you can also do that. There's space for that. So whatever you do, there's space for it. It's just about what do you truly desire in your life. Like Gandhi used to say, be the change you want to see. So think about that and do that. Use it as a guideline, as the very least. That's what I'm thinking. I cannot say that yes, we need forgiveness, because that I feel like that's kind of also preaching. I mean, I might feel that for myself, and I might feel that this is a great path for the humans to go, but this is the way I see it, with my own very contemporary awareness. I might in a year think otherwise. I might in this moment think, well, it depends. You know?
Yeah, I think
It's
that it's a wise way to put it. Because yeah, who are we? Who are we to tell each other what is right and wrong? But when it comes to this way of existing, way of living with ourselves, living with our thoughts and emotions, we can live with whatever thoughts and emotions we want to. So do we need forgiveness? My yes comes with the addition of, if you want more space for understanding and compassion. That's something I learned myself. I do personally need forgiveness to expand my ability, or capacity for understanding and compassion. I really do need it, and things are easier. Life is more smooth, more light when I cultivate that. And I'm still learning. And then eventually you can say, no, you don't need forgiveness either if you don't want to enter into that process, or if you sort of live in this state of acceptance all the time, or this quite non-judgmental state. If you live like that all the time, you might have no need for forgiveness, and because you might have let it go already in every moment.
Might already do it.
Yeah.
Just by being you, being all natural you.
But,
I mean, we also touched this very shortly earlier, that when you come this being that you are, all these things are natural. There's, for example, like the 10 Commandments is a good example, because in the way that the interpretation goes when we read the Bible today, for example, it goes that you must not steal, you must not cheat, or you must not, all these things, like you shouldn't. But in reality, it's the other way around. It's not commandments. It's like, how do you say, it's promises. It's what God promises you when you are aligned with God. So if you're aligned with God, you do not steal, because you have no need to steal. You have not need to envy. You have not need to cheat. You have not need to do all of these other things, murder and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. I find that very beautiful. I also find these mentionings worth all the deep diving into developing myself and my, you could say, spirituality. That's gonna be another topic, because now I say spirituality and it's so down to earth. There's no fluffy unicorny something. But previously in my life, when I heard that word, I was like, whoa. But for my now I can easily say that for my personal development and the spiritual path I'm on, and how I want to be in this world, and yeah, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, how I want to see the world, how I want to affect the world. In that image, it makes a lot of sense to do this sort of work, to build this awareness and move towards these different states of being aligned with God, as you say, nature, universe, higher consciousness. Do you have some final words before I wrap it up?
Nope.
All right. Thank you very much. This is Yeshua and Patrick with the podcast, A Matter of Trust.
Peace out.